We want you to hear what he said in context now, to be fair, regardless of what position you're on this. What he said prior to and then after the soundbite that everyone's heard. Here it is.
Governments fail. The government in this text, comprised of Caesar, Quirinius, Pontius Pilate, Pontius Pilate. The Roman government failed. The British government used to rule from east to west. The British government had a Union Jack. She colonized Kenya, Ghana, Nigeria, Jamaica, Barbados, Trinidad, and Hong Kong. Her navies ruled the 7 seas all the way down to the tip of Argentina in the Falklands. But the British government failed. The Russian government failed. The Japanese government failed. The German government failed. And the United States of America government, when it came to treating her citizens of Indian descent fairly, she failed. She put them on reservations. When it came to treating her citizens of Japanese descent fairly, she failed. She put them in internment prison camps. When it came to treating the citizens of African descent fairly, America failed. She put them in chains. The government put them on slave quarters, put them on auction blocks, put them in cotton fields, put them in inferior schools, put them in substandard housing, put them in scientific experiments, put them in the lowest paying jobs, put them outside the equal protection of the law, kept them out of their racist bastions of higher education, and locked them into positions of hopelessness and helplessness. The government gives them the drugs, builds bigger prisons, passes a 3-strike law, and then wants us to sing God Bless America? No, no, no. Not God Bless America. God damn America, that's in the Bible for killing innocent people. God damn America for treating her citizens as less than human. God damn America as long as she tries to act like she is God and she is supreme.
Fiery words. Joining us now is Dwight Hopkins, who's an ordained minister himself and a member in good standing at the Trinity United Church of Christ. Mr. Hopkins, thank you for joining us, sir. Do you believe that by playing that larger soundbite, it puts in context what is the true ideology of your church?
Well, I think it definitely is a step toward clarity by contextualizing the 30-second sound bites, because what it says, if we listen closely, Reverend Wright says that God damn America if she continues to play the role of God, if America continues to act as if she is God. And there, as he says, he's literally in the Bible, he's talking about particularly the Old Testament, where Yahweh God condemns ancient Israel for trying to either turn away from God or try to act like God.
Were you there when he made that comment?
No, I was not there for that particular sermon.
When you first heard it as a member of the church, were you offended as an American?
I was not offended as an American because I know that there is a specific structure to black sermons in America. That is to say, there's usually 5 or 6 moves. The first move is to do a biblical interpretation. The second move is to apply the biblical interpretation to personal experience, personal healing and transformation. The third move is to apply biblical interpretation to social structures and systems and foreign policy. And then the fourth move is to say, now that we've gone through this hell, now that we've gone through this darkness of the midnight hour,
right,
how do we reintegrate and reconciliation and love? And the fifth part is to say, the doors of the church are open, please enter. And what we have in those 30 seconds...
Well, let me just stop you real quick. You're saying you understand it. Do you also understand people for not understanding it, for being offended when they hear those words?
I think that as I've listened to people and I've talked to people and text messages people, I'm getting a better appreciation for that.
Let me read to you something. I'm looking at your website right now. I'm going to read it to the viewers at home as I read it here as well. I've got it up on my computer. We're a congregation which is unashamedly black and unapologetically Christian. Our roots in the black religious experience and tradition are deep, lasting, and permanent. We are an African people and remain true to our native land, the mother continent, the cradle of civilization. Some people would read that and think to themselves, it sounds like they're more committed to Africa than they are to the United States.
I think if we read the whole webpage explanation of those points. And I think the points...
Okay, what am I missing? You tell us, you tell the viewers.
I think, first of all, we have to go back to the Bible. And I want to refer back to Mr. Blackwell's lead-in. The whole point about black liberation theology is that it's a theology that arose out of a study of Jesus' words. And there are two important passages in the Bible we have to look to. The first is the first public speech that Jesus ever makes on earth is found in Luke chapter 4, verses 18 through 19. And this passage is very important. You don't have to be a Christian. You can just be a literate person to look at that passage in the New Testament.
But he seems to be saying, Mr. Blackwell, that you guys are just too political. That you should stick to God and Jesus and your personal relationship with your Savior and not be going off in a direction that seems to be, his word for it, collective. My interpretation of it, leftist or communist.
Right. I think people call Jesus a socialist and a communist and a Marxist as well, because in Luke chapter 4, verses 18, I hope the viewers are writing this down, whether you're atheist or a Christian, and we'll see, Jesus says, my purpose on earth, which I announce this day, is to feed the poor, give water to the thirsty, clothe those who are hungry, and visit those who are in jail. There's nothing, that's the primary purpose that Jesus said. I'm quoting the Bible here, because I want to get back to Mr. Blackwell talked about traditional Christianity. And the second point is that there's only one passage in the Bible where Jesus says, these are the criteria to get into heaven. And that's in Matthew 25, verses 31 and following.
We've got 30 seconds left. Right. You said you would address Mr. Blackwell's comment. Here's your chance to do it.
Right. And so Luke 4:18 is one, Matthew 25 and 31, and the only criteria Jesus lays out is to feed the hungry, clothe the naked, give shelter to those who are homeless, and visit me in prison.
So he was a political activist, and you defend your church for also being politically and socially active.
I think if you speak truth to power, power will react.
Thank you, sir. Thanks so much for taking time to join us. Dwight Hopkins, Trinity United Church. Really a chance to hear both perspectives. Let's take it to our panel. Ladies, who's right?
The deacon or whoever that is from Trinity, he's correct.
Dwight Hopkins.
Dwight Hopkins, yes. The thing is, it's really not even about race. It's about oppression and power, and speaking to the power that's oppressing the people. And after all, the modern civil rights movement grew out of the church. Martin Luther King Jr., all of the ministers who founded the Southern Christian Leadership Conference.
Why is it so hard for a white American to listen to that argument, though, and hear hate speech that's anti-American, Alexis?
Well, and I think in the in the more expanded clip that you gave, what I was thinking for every example that he gave, which was about a government failing, there was a people that rose up for freedom. So there was a positive message in that was missed, I think, by the Reverend. And
well, how many people have called your radio show, Martha, and said, this guy's hateful, I can't stand what he said about all of them?
All of them.
Well, that's because it's been played out of context. And the context is that you're speaking truth to power, you're challenging authority that has been oppressing a people, and you're trying to get justice.
In the past, though, and it's almost giving no credit. And even Barack Obama said that the other day, that Reverend Wright did not give sufficient credit to where we've come beyond the civil rights movement. It was as if he's stuck in time. Even Obama said that the other day.
That, but discrimination still exists, even though and the effects of discrimination still exist. So I think that's what
really
people are still concerned about.
Is that the reality is that racism, sexism, discrimination happens to be alive and well today. And you know, maybe it's hard for some people to hear, but absolutely, what a good thing to at least have this dialogue. Certainly, the Reverend's comments were inflammatory. He's very passionate. He's very articulate, and he makes people think.
But here's the political question. Do you think this is a winner for Barack Obama? This conversation, this
It'll be interesting to see what happens. We can't say yet. I think in some cases yes, in others no.
Not with yours, not with your callers, right, Martha?
No, but I think what has to be said here is that when we look at this kind of situation, I think he said the right thing acknowledging Barack Obama about how white folks feel about this, because you can always find a reason, black, white, or brown, you can find a reason to be put down. And what I think Obama's trying to do, and he's going to have to continue to do, is to say, hey, we're not there anymore. I'm proof of the fact we're not there anymore.
Right. And I also think he was uniquely suited to make the speech that he made to talk about the challenge of race in America and race relations.
And here's the question we want you at home to answer for us. We want to know what you think about this. And our question is really quite simple. The black liberation theology, as you know it now, after hearing from Ken Blackwell, who's a critic, and a defender of the church, Dwight Hopkins there, do you think it's a healing ideology or a hurtful ideology?